beneficiaries so that communities can adapt to the new reality.
Today on the interview segment, we're joined by Dr. Yusuf Wato, Biodiversity and Innovation Manager, WWF. Karibu sana Daktari. Thank you for joining us. First, tell us about these erratic weather patterns that Kenyans keep on hearing about on the globe.
Thank you very much, Gilda, for having me on this show. And the topic about climate change is a very hot topic because when you look at Kenya, we've just come out of a prolonged drought between 2019 and 2023. And immediately thereafter, from November last year up to now, we are dealing with heavy rains and floods. And indeed, as you have said, the weather patterns globally is becoming very erratic. And the reason is because there is this phenomenon which everybody talks about, climate change. And climate change is basically a long-term shift in weather patterns, in temperature globally, which is caused by global warming. And global warming is actually caused by the greenhouse gases that we emit. And these greenhouse gases then traps the energy that we get from the sun, and it makes the world that we live in a hot place. The temperatures have increased by 1.2 degrees. And scientists tell us that the moment temperatures, the global temperatures increase by 1.5 or beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade, then we shall be experiencing a lot of these erratic, weather patterns, whether it is flooding, whether it is persistent droughts, whether it is cyclones, hurricanes, and so on and so forth. So as a people, we have to ensure that we mitigate the impacts of climate change. And how we do that is, to ensure that we reduce our carbon footprints. We reduce the amount of...
there is a big jargon, carbon footprints. Can you just elaborate more on that?
Yeah, we have to ensure that the greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, that comes from our vehicles, from our industries, or even from our agricultural production systems are reduced as much as possible so that we reduce the warming of the globe.
Mm-hmm. A recent study by Cambridge revealed that carbon monoxide from our household is a major contributor of pollution in the air and all that you're talking about. How do we deal with this?
Absolutely. If you look at the households, in Kenya, 80% of the energy that we use in our homes actually are from biomass, basically wood. And if you burn wood, then of course what you send out is carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and this is then what contributes to climate change and global warming. So one way in which we deal with this is to ensure that everybody has access to clean energy, alternative forms of energy, like for instance maybe using improved stoves which do not require a lot of firewood, or even better still use other clean energy from solar power. Sometimes we use gas, although it is also being contested that gas is actually, it is being contested that gas is also a source of pollutant, but also, it cannot be renewed. In other words, it can be exhausted very, very quickly. So solar energy, wind energy, and other forms of clean energy is an alternative that we can be able to use in our household so that we reduce the carbon footprints.
Speaking of the erratic weather patterns, we've heard about the weatherman warning about the cyclones. There was the Hidaya hurricane. I mean, what are all these? Just breaking down to Kenyans, what is this cyclones and hurricanes? It's new to us and we don't know what is happening. Because we had a warning about Hidaya and it came and passed. What is this?
Yeah, so it all boils down to the rising of temperature of the globe, which is caused by these greenhouse gases. So when the earth warms, then what happens is that, of course, the ocean water also gets heated. And if our ocean waters are heated and the pressure within the ocean changes and the wind direction or speed changes, that creates a storm which then comes to land on the ground. And that is why you see, for instance, hurricanes that then affect the coastal towns and settlements around the oceans and so on and so forth. Very recently, there was a big scare about Hidaya.
Hidaya, and by the way, what happened to Hidaya? It didn't materialize, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, so when these cyclones originate from the sea, a lot of things happen. There could be change in, the pressure within the ocean. There could be change in the wind, because the speed of the wind and the direction of the wind would determine where these cyclones would then hit. If, for instance, it was predicted that Hidaya was going to hit Kenya, and then these changes happen, it would then perhaps get deflected and hit other coasts which are neighboring Kenya. Like Hidaya hit a bit of Tanzania coastline, but we were lucky that it did not hit Kenya. And so those changes is actually what then causes the intensity and the impact of some of these cyclones.
There's some other countries who are prone to, hurricanes, wildfires, like, the US, the European countries. Hurricanes have never been witnessed in this part of the world. And why is that?
Yeah, so hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons are basically the same things. But depending on, which oceans they happen or which regions of the world they happen in, they are called different things. Like, for instance, in America, coastlines, you hear of hurricanes. When it happens within Indian Ocean and it hits the coastlines of Africa, you hear typhoons. Is basically the same phenomena, different names.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are the bold and equitable solutions that the world should adopt, just mitigate the effects of climate change?
I think there are three fundamental things that need to happen. Number one is that the countries which are heavy polluters should be able to, change their methods of production and consumption to ensure that they reduce these carbon footprints. Mm-hmm. It is said that, for instance, about 50% of the greenhouse gases that actually causes climate change is produced by 5 countries. Mm-hmm. And these are, China, America, European Union, Brazil, India. They contribute the biggest, footprints of these greenhouse gases. Mm-hmm. So these countries, number one, should reduce their carbon footprints. And a lot of these countries have already committed, to reducing their carbon footprints. And what we call the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change. Mm-hmm. This is where, countries commit to changing the way they produce their goods, the way they do their agriculture, maybe transition to renewable energy, like, for instance, for vehicles and other motorized equipments that they use, and that then reduces their carbon footprints. The second thing is, especially for the poor countries and the developing countries like Kenya, we need to ensure we adapt to climate change. So we have to have an adaptation plan, and these would be things like, ensuring that for farmers, we practice what we call climate-smart agriculture. Mm-hmm. Look for crops that do not require a lot of water so that our food security is not threatened, for instance. Ensure that our forests are conserved and they are restored, because when we experience heavy rainfall and we have destroyed our forests, that is where you get a lot of runoff, when rain finally comes. And this causes flooding, soil erosion and those kind of things. Landslides, and many, many disasters. We also need to ensure that we have interventions for collecting or harvesting rainwater. When we experience prolonged drought like the one that we experienced between 2019 and 2023, a lot of people are affected because of water scarcity, because of lack of food, and the same happened to wildlife. Like for instance, in 1 year alone, Kenya lost close to 100 elephants because of starvation, because of lack of water. And usually elephants are very hardy animals. And the moment you see them dying because of lack of food, lack of water, then you can imagine what happens to other biodiversity. So it is very, very important to ensure that we have this landscape restoration plan. We ensure we protect our forests. We collect, rainwater so that we save it for times when it is very, very dry, and have other what we call nature-based solution or enterprises to protect people's livelihoods.
Speaking of nature-based solutions, we've seen the government, the Kenyan government now has intensified efforts of tree planting, the importation of electric cars. Is this going anywhere? Just the planting of trees and these few interventions, are we doing it right?
First of all, these initiatives are very, very important, but we need to look at it from a global scale. Kenya and the African continent in general contributes only 3.8% of emissions. Yet when it comes to vulnerability, we are actually affected more by the impacts of climate change. Of course, like other countries, Kenya is committed to reducing its emission, even though it is not a lot. And it has committed to reduce its emission by 32%. However, because climate change is a global phenomenon, it is not going to, reduce the impact that we are going to face because there has to be a global action, at that global level to ensure that climate change actually and its impact actually reduces. However, the restoration and the planting of trees that we are doing in Kenya now, under the commitment by the president of planting 15 billion trees, is a good move. But we need to go beyond that to look at other ways of mitigating climate change. One intervention which is very commendable is that Kenya is transitioning to renewable energy, or has committed to transition to renewable energy 100% by 2030. When we are talking about restoration, we should also look at, for instance, rangelands. 85% of Kenya is arid and semi-arid.
Yes.
We actually do not have, forest. We have dry lands, we have grasslands. So planting trees might not be, the only restoration option in some of those dry lands. We need to think of what we call rangeland, management. For instance, reduce the number of livestock that we have in regions where we have huge herds of livestock, or maybe have what we call grazing plants. So, moving livestock from one area to another to ensure that we do not over-degrade our land, our grasslands and things like that. But also move to what we call climate-smart agriculture, use less water but grow crops that can be able to, resist drought and has good commercial value.
Thank you so much, Daktari, for, creating time for us. That has been Dr. Yusuf Wato from the WWF speaking about the erratic weather patterns, the environment.